And so today we're going to keep the conversation going and have a part 2, how affect groups affect our connections with loved ones. And then we are going to do a part 3 and part 4. So make sure to stay tuned for those as well. Let me just introduce Jeff Cook and T.J. Wilson again. They are the co-hosts of the popular Enneagram podcast called Around the Circle, which I subscribe to and love listening to. They have 11,000 listeners and just surpassed 600,000 downloads. So make sure to go and subscribe right now, wherever you listen to your podcasts. So can you guys start by giving just a brief overview of affect groups, or really just preface the conversation however you want? I want to give the floor to you guys.
One of my favorite ways of coming to relationships is thinking about there's 4 dimensions to a relationship. Oftentimes we think there's me connecting with you, you connecting with me, but there's actually another element here. I'm going to give you something and you're going to receive it. And you are going to give me something and I'm going to receive it. And there's actually 4 things going on. And if any one of those don't happen, the relationship's not going to work. And that's incredibly important to name. What is it that I give to you to show you I care about you, I love you, I want to be connected to you? And can you actually receive that? And very different is what you're going to give to me. And again, very different. Am I going to be able to receive that? If those 4 things happen, we have connection and there's flow and there's energy. And what's interesting to me is that what we give, what we offer, and how we're trying to connect to others is very much a part of our Enneagram type. If you can name that, how you're trying to connect with others, it's incredibly valuable, because oftentimes we want to be in relationship with people who are different than us. Oftentimes complementariness is just what we're attracted to most in other friends, in lovers. And we'll see, when we're trying to connect with our children, sometimes they're very different from us. And if we can just name, look, this is how I'm trying to connect with the people I care about, and this is how they're trying to connect with me, that is, 90% of relationships in my mind.
Yeah, if anyone has studied like the 4 love languages, this is one of the other places where this idea is sort of prominent, like how we give, how we receive, and we whittle it down to 3 with the affect groups, and it's really about how we relate to each other, to the person across the table.
That's phenomenal. Are there 5 love languages? TJ, I think you said there are 4.
Sure. Are there 5? It's been so long since I've looked at that. Is it 5?
Is that a
5
popular book?
I don't know.
Did that sell some copies?
So you've taken it from 5, I think, down to 3.
Yep.
And I love
words of affirmation don't matter.
The 4 that are important to me, I'm going to bring that list down to 3.
I love what you said, Jeff, about naming it, because I think as we go along in this conversation, people will think to themselves, I didn't know that I was trying to connect in this way. And that's really, really helpful to see and to be able to name that. And knowing is half the battle. So excited to talk more. Do you want to give a little brief description about each of the 3 and what types fall into the 3 affect groups?
Yeah. So there's not, as you'll know, there's 9 types. There are 4 ways to divide them up into essentially triads, is what we call them. This is one of the ways. How we connect with other people flows real cleanly into these 3 triangles. Each of the types comes out of one of the centers. And so I'm going to call the first group Pragmatists. This is the center of each of the centers. So 3s, 6s, and 9s all sit in the center of their intelligence center. 3s, 6s, and 9s pragmatically create relationships. There is some utility here. The big idea for TJ and I is that what 3s, 6s, and 9s do is they try and create spaces that they can be in and that other people can be in that work, that actually achieve their motive. So 3s wanting attention, want everybody to have attention and want to create spaces where we all have attention. And that's how connection takes place. Sixes want to feel safe and secure, not only for themselves, but for other people. And creating spaces where we all feel safe is how the six connects. Nines want to feel calm in the world that they indwell, but it's not just that they want to feel calm. They want other people to feel calm, and they're going to create those kinds of spaces. And space creation is what is being offered. This is how they are seeking to connect with other people. So that would be the first triad, pragmatists. Did I miss anything there, TJ?
And with these types, the pragmatic aspect is like I identify with nines. We attach to things that work, and we detach from things that don't work. So like objects, spaces, people, like all of this stuff is about like finding the stuff that actually like pragmatically works for what we're looking for, and bringing that in and attaching ourselves to it, attaching it to ourselves. And if it doesn't work, we're going to detach. If it stops working, we're going to detach.
And that's true for 3, 6s, and 9s, all three numbers?
Yep.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. As a 3 married to a 6, I thought my wife and I couldn't be more different, and we don't show up in triads. And so when I talked to my wife about this, I was like, honey, we have something in common. And I explained this to her after listening to your podcast. And we got kind of excited that there's something that we were very similar and agreed on.
Well worth saying, one of the things that we're working on, TJ and I, is actually we share something significant with every type on the Enneagram. Every single combination will have one of the lines, as it were, and that would be yours with your wife. And that would be the one that TJ shares with his wife as well, because he's married to a 6. And so how they connect, very similar. And that will create some common language. I imagine the creating of spaces matters to you, matters to her. And so just because she wants safety and you want attention, the bigger picture of we're in this for each other, I imagine, can come out in some of your language, the dynamics, the chemistry of your relationship.
TJ, what was the words you used again? Because I want to hold on to those. Whatever is functional we hold on to, or not functional we let go of, or what was the words you used precisely?
I don't.
It was
remember.
Attachment and detachment.
Oh, Gotcha.
Yeah,
that's really helpful language. Okay, gotcha.
I would love to unpack that as we go. In object relation theory, which is a psychological theory, this is a non-Enneagram concept that applies very cleanly to the Enneagram triads we're going to be talking about. So if you want to do further study object relation theory says that there's 3 primary energies or
emotions, or
it's
something.
It's going to be attachment, frustration, and rejection. These are principal. The feeling that going into relationships, I'm going to be rejected. Feeling as though when I'm trying to get what I want out of relationships, and it doesn't occur, I'm frustrated. Or thirdly, I attach and detach from relationships. And as we go through the triads, what you're going to see is that one of those 3 descriptions applies very cleanly to what each of the types emphasize in their relationships.
Okay, sounds great. Where do you want to go next?
Next is the idealists. So these are the frustration types. Idealists have an energy where 3, 6s, and 9s are going both ways. They want to feel good inside and they want to feel good outside. Idealists generally are inwardly focused, and they are trying to pull other people in their relationships. They're trying to pull people into these unique experiences for 4s. They're trying to pull people into a better world and becoming a better person for 1s. They're trying to pull people into an adventure for 7s. The pulling nature is how the connection is taking place. The 7 is offering adventure. But what is important about affect is that it's the nature of how they're offering what they have. So the 7 has an adventure. I'm going to try and pull you. So a lot of times the energy in relationships can be started by the 1, 4, and 7. If I'm going to try and pull you into the thing I really care about, and here would be where connection takes place. If your friend, if your lover, if your child, if your parent is willing to go, then connection can take place with the 1, 4s, and 7s. But what you'll notice with 1s, 4s, and 7s is often they can do things, they can be very lonely people. They can often feel like they're on an island because they're doing the thing and nobody came with them. But if they can get somebody to come with them, they are fulfilled. If somebody doesn't go with them, then they're frustrated. Their ideals are frustrated, and that's them not connecting with others in the world in the way that they want to.
And we call these types idealists because they have an idealistic vision of the thing that they're trying to get. And for ones, like there's an ideal way that the world can be, that we can be better, we can ourselves be better, we can make the world better, come with me to make things better. There's an idealistic version of how we can engage in relationships and feel our emotions for 4s. It's this depth of connection and being true to what we're feeling and seeing the beauty of all things. It's an idealistic way of seeing these things. There's an idealistic way of how much life can be fun, what enjoyment can be had, the types of experiences we can have and build and grow together. Like that is what 7s are looking for, this idealistic, like things are always better on the other side. And so we call them idealists. And I think we also partly call them idealists because calling them frustrationists doesn't really work. But the frustration side of this exists because their ideals are idealistic. They can't ever be truly met. And so they're continually finding themselves frustrated.
I'm loving the conversation so far because, up until this, we don't really usually get to the affect groups in the Enneagram primers. And to get to this conversation and to start seeing how some of these numbers overlap is really fun for me to be able to, especially for those who are thinking about their partner or their loved one listening or watching this. They're starting to see some, oh, wow, we actually team in some of these ways. Like 4s and 7s are often thought is very opposite in a lot of ways, but to see that they're both idealists and both have a romantic or idealistic way of seeing the world, and to pull others into that is really a great partnership, and a great way to find common ground in those kind of relationships.
Yep.
So, and I love the language about going back to the Pragmatists, this creating spaces. So 3s are creating space for people to, what did you say, Jeff, achieve or find recognition or be affirmed, something like that.
Sorry, can you repeat the setup?
Go
there?
back. You said because the Pragmatists are creating space, which I love that language. Just to kind of summarize, 3s are creating space for others to achieve or be admired. Did you say?
Think of 3, 6s, and 9s being especially relational in their gear when they seek to connect with others. And what is taking place is I want you to have an experience, but I also want to have the experience at the same time. The 3 wants to feel successful and wants you to feel successful at the same time. And when that takes place, connection happens. The 6, this is why 6s consistently are speaking about what might go wrong. They want to feel safe, but it's not just that they want to feel safe. They want you to be safe. And that's how the 6 is connecting to others. And so to the 9 wants to feel calm. If I can make everybody else calm, we're going to be fine. Turn on some Bob Marley music. Bob Marley is singing about everybody just being calm right now. And it's not just for you. It's for himself because he wants to feel calm, Okay. The idealists want to do their thing. It's not so much about you. It's about them, and they're trying to pull you into the thing they care about most.
Gotcha. But I love how the common denominator here is connection.
Yeah.
And that this is starting to make more sense to me as we go along. That as a 3, I like pulling people into a space where we both can achieve together. And there's this connection. With 6s, it's to feel safe together, to feel that security together. For 9s, it's to feel that calmness and that peace, that harmony together. And then for 1s, 4s, and 7s, it's they're wanting to connect by pulling you into their idealism or their idealistic picture of whatever that is. For 1s, it's a better world. For 7s, it's their fun adventure. And then I appreciate how you guys said that if they don't pull the other person into that, then they can feel very lonely. That's
Right.
really helpful. Okay, I'm learning. This is good.
You'll notice, if I can use you as an example, you're setting up these Enneagram conferences. There is something about your success that's tied to that. And we are all cheering for your success there, but you're elevating other people to a platform where they can achieve also. And if they are successful, you're successful. And if that connection takes place, the relationship will work. So too, TJ owns a coffee shop. These are the most chill environments there are. And he wants to work there. And he wants to be in that chill environment, not only for his own sake, but if other people enter and can likewise, enjoy that sort of culture of calm being together, that is a connecting moment, and it's going both ways.
Beautiful. Love it. Okay, so you want to talk about the relationist types now?
Yeah. Relationists, as opposed to pulling people inward, their energy is going outward. Relationists expect rejection in relationships. 2s, 5s, and 8s all come to relationships expecting to be rejected. And because of that, they are going to give gifts. They're going to give something that they really treasure. And if you receive the gift, then we can be pals. But if you reject the gift, which you're probably going to do, then I can just move on to the next person. So here's my help. Did you receive it? I will know that if you give me care in return. Here's my wisdom. Did you receive it? If you did, then I will know there's connection. Here's my strength and aptitude. Did you receive it? If you did, then we can connect. But the gifts are given at a distance. There's always an invisible force shield between 2s, 5s, 8s. I think 2s, 5s, and 8s are the most difficult numbers to understand because of this. They don't actually let you know what's going on inside of them. And you might think you know 2s and you don't. And you might think you know 8s and you don't. And this is why.
And leaning on that word, relationists, like this is how these types see the world, is how things are related to other things. And so you have 2s that are all about relationships and connectedness, and do you find me valuable? Do you need me in your life? 5s see the greater picture, the bigger puzzle, the way that all the pieces fit together. 8s have a really intense radar for who's in charge, who has the power, like what are power dynamics, the relationship there, and all of these types, when they come to a situation, because they are expecting rejection, they are shutting down, they're sort of closing off their own inner life, their needs, their desires, they're closing themselves off to what's inside in order to offer the thing that they have. And if you don't receive the thing that I have to offer, why on earth would I share more of myself with you?
My mind is blown because I've just never it just seems like a really deep insight that is profound and helpful once you understand it and know that about your loved one or your coworker. I can see it playing out with 2s, and not to just use it. There's a lot of positive aspects of 2s, of course, but just running into some 2s in ministry in my past, I've gotten emojis, text messages, and all kinds of pursuit of them pursuing me and other church leaders. But then they're happy, and then one day we'll just get an email out of the blue, a really long email saying, I think I'm going to go to another church because I don't feel like I'm welcome here. and it'll be like a bomb. And like, where did that come from? And I think it totally makes sense. Like they put out lots of feelers, give, and if they don't feel like it's received, then they feel rejected.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and it makes me have compassion on twos to understand why they would feel that way.
I'd love this.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I'd love to speak to 5s and 8s on that front as well. Both my children, I have a child who's a 5, a child who's an 8, and I've had to learn how to receive wisdom from my 5 and had to learn how to receive strength and, the physical encouragements from my 8. I'm a fairly capable, competent person, and there's something about my personality where I actually want to be self-sufficient. But if I push into self-sufficiency too hard, I'm not going to connect with my kids. And so, especially if we're in relationships with 2s, 5s, and 8s, becoming the sort of person who receives their gifts really matters, not to you, but often to them. And that connection takes place. I have 2s in my life who give me gifts I don't want. But being able to receive the gifts with gladness and joy and deep thankfulness and what can I do for you matters to their hearts, and that's where connection takes place.
It's really helpful to know that about 5s, to know that when they're sharing their wisdom, that they view it as giving you a gift.
Yeah.
And are looking to see if you're going to receive it as a test to see if you want to continue to connect.
Huge problem.
You wouldn't notice that. You wouldn't know that about a 5 unless someone told you. And that's why I think one of the conflict triggers for a 5 is getting talked over or interrupted. Mm-hmm. It's like they're in the moment, like rejecting what you have to say or rejecting your gift, their gift that they're giving you.
To build on that real quick, I've had a handful of conversations with women who are married to 5s who feel like their spouse is mansplaining to them all the time. And I totally get that. But here's the thing. They're trying to love you. And this is the only way they know how. This is just how they try to connect. And I recognize that in our culture, them overemphasizing their wisdom and knowledge about, subject X makes you nuts sometimes. But this is a beginning point for the connection process.
TJ, we're going to say something, or can we move to 8s?
The only thing I had to say was adding a joke to that. Sometimes it is mansplaining, and that should be called
sometimes
out.
I get
that.
That's
yes,
right.
Absolutely. Well, actually, but sometimes it really is. They're just trying to offer the thing that they have, and the thing that they find valuable. And if you don't see it as valuable, then there's a disconnect.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So 8s, to know that they come in expecting to be rejected is kind of mind-boggling to me as an 8. Or not as an 8, but thinking about 8s, because you wouldn't get the impression that they care if somebody rejected them. But to know that they're go ahead, explain what that means. What kind of gift are they wanting to give to see if you're going to accept them?
This is the thing that most of us don't know about 8s. 8s are the number that feel the most vulnerable and fragile all the time. And you don't know that. And I don't know that in my relationships. But they experience the world as though there is a thin membrane that's going to break at any moment, is going to hurt me. And so my energy is going to go outward assertively, aggressively to ensure that I'm protected. The only people the 8 is going to let into their lives are those who are never going to betray them ever. And they're going to have very deep safeguards for that. And one of their tests is, did you receive my strength in a way, that elevated my agency, where I felt like I wasn't vulnerable in your presence? And when that happens, the 8 will begin to fashion a very small group of friends and trusted, they have a circle of trust, and it's often very small. And this is very common with 8s, that you just have a couple of people who you really feel like you can be vulnerable to. but the place that they test the waters is here. Have you received my gift in the way that I want you to receive my gift?
And to some degree, they, just to come back to what you said, Tyler, they don't actually care if you reject them. To some degree, they don't, because they have already created that separation. And this is a test
Right.
to see if you get in the first place.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So for me, this is just strength is such helpful language, or to name it. Because for me, if somebody puts me down, it's more about like, why would they want to shame me, or why would they want to belittle me,
Yep.
or why do my kids disrespect me in this way? But for eights, asking the question, do they make me feel stronger or weak, or do they make me powerful with agency, or do they make me look vulnerable? Like it's just different. It's a different question that they're asking or thinking about unconsciously. And
Right.
that helps me as I think about my son, who's an 8. Like, did I allow him to take up space and feel powerful and feel empowered, or not? That's extremely helpful to me as a parent.
And notice that both 3s and 8s are feeling repressed. So this is tied to, like, it's tied together, but it's about a very different thing. You insult an 8 and it doesn't hurt their feelings, but it does communicate something to them about power. You insult a 3 and it doesn't really hurt their feelings, but it does communicate something about attention.
I was just talking with an 8 over lunch, and this is a guy that's been in the military for many, many years and just getting into the Enneagram and loving it. And he's talking. You can tell he's well put together. He's punchy, strong. And we were talking, and he said something to the effect of, "I got a tear. Like, almost got a tear in my eye." That was like the last thing I expected him to say. And it goes to your point, Jeff, that they are the most gushy, like vulnerable, soft-hearted people in the world, but definitely have this tough exterior. And to know that is just really helpful.
You'll see that the soft interior when they're secure, because when 8s are secure, they're going to move to 2, and that's when their defenses come down, and the lavish big-heartedness comes out in those spaces, and that's where you can see better what's constantly going on within.
So good. Any more to say about the relationist types before we start kind of pairing these types together?
I got nothing.
Okay.
Same.
Okay. Does it matter where we start? I mean, I have idealist types. How do they relate to the pragmatist types? So how do the 1s, 4s, and 7s relate to 3, 6s, and 9s? What do you guys got?
This is the best pairing, clearly. I am a 1. My wife is a 3. There is something about this relationship. It seems to me there will be a lot of energy coming from the 1, 4, and 7 in terms of setting some of the themes for the relationship. What is going to really color what we do together, and what we care about. So being a 1, 4, or 7, these, the what are we thinking about adventure wise for the 7? What are the emotional depths that we're going to plumb for the 4? Where in the world are we going to make things better for the 1? That's really going to color a lot of this relationship, because the 3, 6, 9, if they're in relationship with an idealist, are probably going to are going to subsume that ideal into how they function in the world. The 3, 6, 9 need to get their motive fulfilled. The 3 needs to feel like they're getting attention for going to that place where the ideal is being realized. The 6 needs to feel safe. If we're going to go on this adventure, I need to feel safe. If we're going to go into these emotional depths, I need to still feel secure. If we're going to make the world better, then you need to make sure that I'm safe in the process. In the 9, yeah, we can do these ideals as long as everything remains copacetic. that attachment that takes place comes from the 369. The idealist is saying, hey, come over here. There's this wonderful, wonderful thing that we can plumb into. The 369 is really going to be the one that receives that or doesn't receive that. And that's going to be some of the energy and the engine going on there.
Yeah. There's an interesting way to think about these types as sort of pairs almost. Like 6 and a 1 are almost going to have the same goals, because the 1 wants to make things better, and the 6, that's like following the rules and doing what's expected of them. Like that's right in line. Like these two types are gonna sort of naturally work together really, really nicely. A 3 and a 7 moving together are like it's faster. It's like let's jump to the chase. Let's get moving. That's great, and we can Instagram our whole adventure as well, and it works. 9s and 4s, like there's a nice sort of like pullback in. Let's spend hours talking about whatever we want and just like following the river where it goes. Awesome, let's do that. But there's also like thinking about, as idealists bring forward a vision and pragmatists want to know if it's going to work or not, there can also be some really intense friction with these types. Because if the pragmatist is saying, hey, hold on, I know that's what you want, but it's not actually going to work in the real world, then the idealists then find themselves frustrated and want to sort of move on, want to get into a place where they aren't frustrated. The pragmatist sees the idealist moving off in a direction that's not going to work, and they say, nah, I'm not doing that. So that there can be some real tension between the two types if they aren't able to recognize and acknowledge that this is where they come from.
So the idealists are, hey, this is a better world, come with me. And then if they're on board, the pragmatists are on board, it's going to be really beautiful because they can help execute that vision, and team together. But one of the complications that comes to mind as you're talking is, and this is something I've talked about in my Enneagram like business workshops too, when you have a type 4 idealist who's big in aesthetics and has this beautiful vision of, marketing campaign that's really beautiful, and the pragmatist is like, we don't have enough money for that, we can't do that, we got to do something less aesthetic, dumbed down, and then that can make the 4 really frustrated. That idealistic vision versus reality, or someone who's being really pragmatic doesn't care about the aesthetics, or that's one example of what you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, this is where the frustration comes in for the idealist. The 1 is going to say, I must, there must be something wrong with me. The 4 is going to say, I'm, there's some flaw, given the fact that nobody connects with what I see as so beautiful. How would the 7 relate to this? 7, I think, just kind of bounces and just says, oh, I'm going to just go on my own then.
Yeah.
But the frustration is what matters here. Is I have these ideals. Here's the big thing, actually, even underneath that, is their motive isn't being fulfilled. The 1 wants to improve the world and that's their motive. And if other people come alongside, it's almost like it gives it just so much more energy and life. And like, this is the sweet spot. So too the 4, if you can see the beautiful thing I can see, then, we can talk about the beauties, in the 7, I'm going on this magical, mystical adventure. Are you going to come with me? You are. Motive fulfilled. And Enneagram is all about motive. And this is how it works in relationships.
Wonderful. That's great. And it feels like we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here, but this is something that really where the cohorts that you guys have, Enneagram coaching, can help kind of continue to work these things out. But I'm loving the conversation. All right. Do you want to move on to relationists with pragmatists? Pragmatists. Pragmatists. I can't say it. Pragmatists. Okay. I was telling you guys I don't say this word very much. This is great. Do you want to move on to that, or do you have anything further to share with the last pairing?
One quick side note, and TJ, I'm sure, would love to chime in on this front. Sometimes you shouldn't be in a relationship with another person. Sometimes this person who is the idealist, they want to take you into terrible spots. I am a sucker for sevens. I'm just a sucker, right? And some sevens are not healthy people, and they'll take you into. And I have experienced this where I'm like halfway down the road, I'm like, I don't think I'm feeling this is not the right place for me. And so as we're talking about relationships, some relationships are really valuable and you ought to invest in them. You put your best self in. In some relationships, you actually, if you're an attachment type, you should detach. That actually would be a wise move, And so all relationships really need to get felt out. And anyway, TJ will say this better than I will.
Yeah, and one of the golden rules, we did talk about this in our last interview, is that that there is no magic combination. There is no this type is better with this type. That doesn't really exist. It all has to do with the health of the individual.
Yeah.
And part of these kinds of pairings and becoming aware of it, like how I give, how I receive, how you give, how you receive, like that conversation can make things more healthy. But if the person across from you is an idealist who is absolutely not interested in facing the reality of the thing that they're trying to reach, then it's gonna be problematic. And their own health is a significant factor in how that relationship works. And if they're not interested in becoming healthier, then maybe you shouldn't be in a relationship with them.
Good points. Yep. Great points, guys. All right. Relationist?
Yep. Relationists and pragmatists have another interesting dynamic. Again, it's gift givers and space creators. So if you kind of get that in your head, somehow the gift givers are giving the wisdom or the care or the strength, and the space creators are creating the space for calm, for attention, or for safety. And somehow that's going to overlap. There's not necessarily, in my mind, the same kind of instigation that's coming from the idealists. So this is one of those places it feels like those relationships kind of materialize kind of naturally, and it's almost like you kind of fall into them. There is a trustworthiness that is at play here. It seems to me the 258 kind of testing the waters for the 369, but the 369 they're trying to create the spaces. So however that's going to play out, I see a lot of relationships that are kind of remain in the intelligence center here. So I can name a handful of, especially friendships. I can name some 2-3 friendships. Very common. I can see a handful of romantic couples who are 8-9 pairings. And I bet you that has a lot to do with them both appreciating and gifting one another agency and, oversight of their own spaces. That's what comes to my mind as we're starting. You got thoughts?
Yeah, because with relationists wanting to see how things are connected to other things, and also they are offering something, and so if they're offering something into the space that the pragmatists are creating, then can be a really natural fit. And I'm hoping that this is the same place that I've said this in the past, but there can be a really practical and specific nature to the relationships of this pairing, because we're doing this thing, and once that thing is over, it's not necessarily like we don't feel the need to maintain the relationship beyond that, except for the societal guilt and the way that we've sort of socially been trained into thinking about how relationships are supposed to go. But once the thing is over, then the relationists are wanting to offer their thing somewhere else, and the pragmatists are like, okay, let's attach to stuff that we already got the thing we want from that. Now let's get it from somewhere else. And I also think that these types can really find difficulty when they aren't matching, when they aren't meeting each other, because it's a rock and a hard place. It's a type that really wants someone else's response, and potentially the other type who is just looking for someone or something to sort of like if I'm looking for stamps and I go to an ice cream store, it's like that's the wrong place to go looking for stamps. Like as a pragmatist, I should be going to a stamp store, and if the thing that I'm going to get is an ice cream store, and that's what a relationist is offering, there's value in ice cream. But like, this is a really weird metaphor, but like there the separation there, the
I hear what you're saying.
the disconnect
Yeah.
can be it can be so extreme that these two types are talking past each other so significantly, and not even knowing that one is looking for stamps and the other is offering ice cream.
I'd love to build on that real quick, because there's two pairings that, especially in romantic couples, are really common. And it's 8 and 6 pairing, and it's 2 and 9 pairing. And here's the thing: is the 6 is looking for stamps from the 8. The 8 is strong, or at least appears strong. And what the 6 really wants is somebody to be strong and keep them protected.
Yep.
And that can be a combination. They both want loyalty. They both don't want to get injured by the other person. And that, especially in romantic relationships, can really be magnets for each other. Both 8s and 6s solve problems emotionally. We'll get to that triad soon. And that can be, if what you are gifting is easily received and really needed, it can be there. And the same is true of 2s and 9s. 9s don't take care of themselves, and 2s are there to take care of people.
Yep.
And so that also is a magnet. And so you'll see, especially with those pairings, it seems to me that can have some strong chemistry, especially in romance.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, this one's probably the hardest for me to wrap my mind around. And it's hard for me to look at the groups pairing, because it's hard for me to not go into all the different combinations, 2s and 3s, 2s and 6s. And so there's just a lot there just a lot to explore, all these different combinations. But I think I'm hearing you, and I'll need to go back and re-listen to this to continue to absorb it. But what would you say are the relationist types? Like, what are they looking for? Is it to give something as a test to see if you'll receive their gift, and then a connection can be made? Is that what you're saying before? Like, 2s want to give something to you and then have you receive it, and then connections made. 5s want to give wisdom.
I feel like there's a ton of the intelligence center goes into our affect. So, 2s want to gift their, heart targeting, emotion targeting care. 5s want to gift thoughtful insights. 8s want to gift physical space, encouragements, a sense that you can do it. There's very much the motive that the 2-5-8s have in terms of their center comes out in what they are giving to other people. It's very much I want to, I'm loving you the way I want to be loved at some level with these types. And that's especially true, I suppose, for 2s, is I'm loving you in the way that I want to receive love.
Yeah. And particularly thinking about the connection, like how does the connection happen? because you can't just take the thing that they're offering and run away.
Right.
You have to take it, you receive it, incorporate it. And twos are not just giving so that they can give until they are completely spent. They're giving so that they have favors in their back pocket. Sorry, twos. I'm not trying to offend you. That's just what's happening. So the fives are offering wisdom because they want to see wisdom enacted. They want to see other people make wise decisions and think and see the bigger picture. Eights are offering power because they want other people to be able to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
And if you aren't receiving their gift, if you aren't actually like coming into the thing that they're offering and letting it become now a part of you, then what else could they give you to create meaningful connection? Nothing.
So going to the pragmatist side, the threes, sixes, and nines, I appreciate what you said about creating spaces to achieve together, to feel safe, find safety together, to find peace and harmony together. So what disrupts that with them? Like if somebody, as a three for me, I can work really well with an eight. I've co-led with an eight, and it's like I've created this space for him to lead, to speak, to feel empowered.
Yep.
What would disrupt that relationship for me? Is it just if he has his own agenda and goes off in some other direction, or what would disrupt that?
When the eight stops acknowledging your contribution, that's going to be an obstacle.
Gotcha. Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
When it's the case, and threes and eights, actually, I've seen that also. A lot of threes and eights do work quite well together. The three oftentimes being the one who kind of comes alongside the eight is commonly what I've seen. Not that it has to be a different way, but a three can often find themselves in an organizational life getting their motive fulfilled. I'm here to make sure everybody feels successful and to get the attention I desire. And that's why I show up, right? And if the eight wants to lead a successful organization with all their energies of that sort, and if they're willing to turn and say, I'm so glad that you're here. You do so much for our company, for our organization, for what we're about. You are essential. That's dynamite right there. You go do your, but here's what we talked about with our Stance podcast. Then the eight's going to say, you go do your job. I'm going to go do my job. Right. And independently, you're going to knock some stuff out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And so for sixes, if the eight moves from, providing strong security for them to then disrupting the space that they're trying to create of safety and security, then that's when they have problems.
The eight's going to get frustrated when the six isn't getting strong. Yeah, if we're still in the same spot after 5 years and you're still not standing up for yourself, that's going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. If the eight is making things feel unsafe, in a romantic relationship, you can imagine an eight becoming abusive. The six eventually is going to detach. It's going to be that. I think those are going to be some of the dynamics.
Or even because sixes are non-productive thinkers, and they have to verbally process, and they have to go over things again and again and again. And like sixes are the type that I think are most likely to reject the past. So the same issues can come up over and over again because it's a new type of issue every time. The eight can potentially see that as a massive distrust toward them, as a hindrance of like, we've already done this test, and why am I still doing it? Why? And like some of that anger and sort of control can come out because now the eight feels trapped because the six in their life is continually questioning them. And that's part of the six's MO, is they want to make sure that the authority figure is still safe and trustworthy. And because they have to verbally process, the 8 can see that as a continual questioning of the kinds of commitments and trust that has already been established.
Good. I just love playing around with these individual combinations because it's helping me think through the broader categories of relationists and pragmatist. So for like a 2 as a relationist and a 3 as a pragmatist, pragmatist, the 2 can come into the 3 space of, hey, let's prop each other up and do something successful together, and that can be a really good pairing. Both people feel affirmed and empowered until a 2 is giving gifts because they want a relational connection, and a 3 is like, no, let's just get stuff done. Let's just produce. Then all of a sudden the 2 probably feels like a cog in the machine. They don't feel like a human being next to the 3.
What I've seen, 2s and 3s, I think really go well together. Oftentimes,
until they don't.
Yeah, until they don't. Of all things I've seen in just watching relationships my wife has, sometimes 2s who had been giving gifts to the 3, and that's attention giving. I'm giving you these gifts of care. And the 3 is like, oh, great, you're lavishing love on me. Say the 2 falls in love with someone else and the gifts start going elsewhere. The attention is severed in that situation, right? So my wife had a very close, like, best friend, girlfriend, who fell in love with the person, and all of a sudden the gifts stopped coming, and which is exactly how things ought to have been. She found somebody, and her gift giving energy went to this new person. That they still are great friends, they still love each other deeply, but it clearly there's less of a connection there, maybe something like that.
That's a good example. All right. Should we move on to the idealists and relationists combination? So the 1s, 4s, and 7s in relationship with relationists, the 2s, 5s, and 8s.
Where should we start here? I'm looking at this list and going, what are the combinations here? It's really worth noting the inward outward here. That 1s are inwardly focused and 2s, 5s, 8s are outwardly focused. And so it's almost like there's an energy channel going from the 2, 5, 8 into the 1, 4, 7. So I specifically see this in my relationships as a 1 with 8s. 8s are angry. Their anger is coming at me. My anger is going inward. And all of a sudden this whole like anger flood is coming into my inner life. But it works the opposite way in terms of when like the energy that's coming outward from 8s is coming into my ideals. It's like, holy cow, this is fuel for the things that I want to accomplish, and so that channel, it's almost like there's a channel of energy going from the relationists towards the idealists. I suppose that's how I would see it to start.
I also think that it's these relationships can be marked by the difference between idealism and connectedness, and by that I mean like that, because 1s, 4s, and 7s are all idealistic, and 2s, 5s, and 8s like they're bringing essentially one thing to the table, and if it's not in the category that lines up with the ideals, then like there's disconnect there. There's trouble on the horizon, because there's not an anchor for these to keep these types together if there isn't real connectedness there.
Just looking at all the numbers, I could see how a 4 or 7's idealism gets trampled on by the 5's data, or the 8's just like pushing back and challenging them. I could see that as being maybe a trouble spot for this group.
Yeah.
Just looking at the numbers. But I have seen, like, I know, like my friend I know a few couples who are 1 and 8 combinations.
Yep. That's the one that
and
stands out to me also.
yeah. And when they can, like, one of the couples, he's a really successful real estate guy, owns a lot of real estate in town. And he's an 8, and he's taking up buying properties and taking over the world. And his wife is a 1, and together they serve on a nonprofit board, and they do English as a second language. They help people get citizenship. And so together they found this, like, common ground, this of working for a better city, of helping people get their citizenship and learn the language. And they're very involved in creating a better world together. And so when they're on the same page, it's a really powerful dynamic.
Mhm.
Yeah. The romantic couples that I see here are all the combinations that share the same intelligence center. 1s and 8s can come together, 5s and 7s can come together, and 2s and 4s can come together. I think as more common. And I bet you it's because, it's again that shared motive that can come into play there and can create some of the engine that is required for a one-on-one, romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm. And the other couple that I know he's an 8, and he's a pastor, and then his wife is a 1, and she's like the director of operations. And they just love being a part of a very community driven church, of working for the good of the neighborhood. And so his vision and hard charging nature, and then her ability to focus on the details and to be practical, and making sure that people in the neighborhood are getting their needs taken care of. Like, it's just it's not just a powerful couple, but as a relationship, but it's also a powerful, like, working combination as well.
Yeah. 1s and 8s, when they're on the same page, can get a lot done together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
1, 8, 1, 3. Those are, we talked about power couples last time, but the reason those are power couples is because one's reactive, one's assertive, and 1s, 3s, and 8s all process the world through action.
Mhm.
And so achievement in doing the thing is how they know whether or not, their motive is fulfilled. So if you have a 1 and an 8, their motive is fulfilled by looking at the world and asking the question, did it get accomplished?
Mm-hmm. And there's a 7 and 8 marriage that comes to mind too. Talk about power couples.
That can be a recipe for losing all your money in Vegas.
That's great.
7 and 8 is super interesting when they get to. There is so much energy in that particular pairing, especially in terms of we are going to consume everything, and you need to be very cautious. I'm sure everybody tells you this. Put the brakes on as often as you can, because natural tendency for a 7-8 couple is going to be voracious. Am I wrong?
No. No, I totally agree. I'm trying to think of something else to say. I haven't really contributed much to this Relationists and Idealists.
It is as I'm looking at this as well. It's like, not as common. What's going to become more common, and we're going to get to it, is actually I connect with people who are in the world the same way I am. So you're going to see a ton of 3-6-9 relationships or 2-5-8 relationships.
Yeah.
Maybe not as many 1-4-7s. We'll talk about that in a second, but yeah.
I know some 4-8 couples, actually.
I think this is one of the more interesting couples. What do you see there? Because I got thoughts.
Because you said the Idealists pull people in.
Yeah.
And so my editor is a male 4 who's married to a female 8, which is kind of like role reversal for to the rest of the world. It's beautiful. little bit less common, but he's wrote a memoir. He's very introspective. He sees the world really beautifully and kind of invites people in. Has invited people into that. And then he just has a wife who's just like, don't say anything bad about my husband. And she's like, gonna protect him and fight for him. And it's just like, he's like, I received that gift, of of loving a powerful woman and receiving that and loving that. And so the relationship's really good in that way. And then she, fights for his creativity and for his book and his artistic work to get out to the world. So just a great, just see some great things there.
Yeah. Thing in my mind that eights and fours share authenticity as a high value. And oftentimes we'll connect there. They also solve problems the same way. They both are emotional response solvers of problems. Some of the more beautiful relationships that I've seen are parent-child on this front. These can go very badly. And the parent, especially if the parent is an 8, they won't understand their 4 child. Or if you have a 4 parent with an 8 child, that will be, a test for the 4 parent. Much more, I just see that so common to see 4-8 pairings in terms of parents and children. And it's one of those things, the 8 is feeling repressed. The 4 is all emotion. And so there is very much a yin yang going on that isn't just stance. Well, I guess that is stance. There's going to be a lot of that needs to get worked out between those two.
And that the authenticity piece, like neither is ever interested in bullcrap.
Yeah.
So the eight will overemphasize the truth in order to get a reaction, to see where the boundaries are. And the 4s being so concerned about being true to themselves, being true to the moment, being true to the feelings, the space that's happening, the internal space that's happening. They want that to be expressed. And so when 4s and 8s can find that place, can realize that this is one thing that they are both very concerned about, then they can actually figure out how to communicate across that distance of the feeling, lack of feeling kind of thing. Like neither are interested in bullcrap. So
anything more to say about this pairing, or do you want to wrap up with talking about the idealists and relationists and relationists and kind of go in that direction?
We should. This may actually take a little bit longer than the back end of our last podcast, because there actually is quite a bit to say here. So like, just if we started with the Pragmatists, for example, we had already kind of mentioned your relationship with your wife. There's an intuitive, almost unspokenness going on here in terms of there is both an inner need and an outer need. I'm creating spaces where my inner need is met, and I'm seeking to serve you in the same way. And if those overlap in term, then there'll be a connection. So again, you wanted attention inside. You're creating spaces where we're all successful together. If the 6 or the 9 can get on board with that, and you're willing to make things calm for the 9 because that's what they want, or you're willing to make things safe for the 6 because that's what they want, create spaces of that sort, the space creation ends up being a place where you're probably going to connect. And again, a lot of romantic relationships kind of work that way.
That's good. So I see that my wife, when she's a 6, she gets stressed out. There's anxiety there. I'm like, okay, well, let me go do this for the kids or go get them. And it's sort of like being in tune with which each person needs and then doing it. It's very kind of functional relationship that really helps each other out.
Functional is a great word there.
Where can it go wrong then? Does it become too robotic? Like, okay, let's just exchange goods and services, like I said earlier, and there's no like more feeling or heart in it, or where can this go wrong?
I think the transactional nature of pragmatists is the place where it goes wrong in a lot of ways, because when you aren't like, as a pragmatist, when the person across the table from me is not meeting the need that I have, or at least like filling the space that I created for them, then why would I stay with them? And it's not about not about feelings. It's not about like I'm not trying to offend you. I just, you aren't doing what I need, so I'll see you later.
It's just not working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of reduce it to it's not working versus like what we know is agape love, and like commitment goes much beyond that sort of functional relationship.
Well, you can imagine, for example, a 3-9 pairing in which success for the 3 means that we're moving to different cities every single year, because that's what achievement looks like. And the 9's going to go nuts with having to change over and over and over again. And so one of those is going to win, as it were. But eventually it's going to be, okay, you think success looks like constant movement, and the other person thinks success looks like stability and, static existence. That's probably the wrong way to put that. A calm, predictable way of being in the world. And the pragmatic desires are going to be in tension. And we could see that, I suppose, with 3-6, it could be the same kind of way. The 3's ambitions may make things feel too risky. What does 6-9 look like breaking down?
Well, there's a 9 isn't necessarily concerned with making things secure, because it's going to be fine.
Yeah, overly optimistic.
Yeah, we often don't really have a ton of patience for the I almost said neurosis, but that is definitely not the right word. 6s, that's not the right word. The
irrational
and
irrational
like,
catastrophizing.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's it. If the 6 goes into excess and it's all panic, that's going to upset the calm at some level,
and it's just exhausting,
right? And so there's the pragmatic. The breakdown is going to take place. I'm offering you calm. I'm telling you everything's going to be all right. If you don't receive my everything's going to be all right, that's where the disconnection comes in. You're not receiving what I'm offering.
Yeah. It's almost like each of us has a circle around us. 3, 6, and 9 each has a circle, and the other types can overlap with our circle, like a Venn diagram, or they're not touching, and that's fine with us as well, because we're detachment. It's fine.
Yeah, this makes sense, because even in the workplace, I'm as a 3, I'm kind of shape-shifting and doing what needs to be done to make things work, and I'll adapt. But then if I'm not receiving what I need in return, then it's easy for me to move to a different job or a different career, and just, it's not working. See you later. And then for other types, it's probably, what in the world are you doing?
Right.
It's very like, what?
You gave up your financial security because you weren't being praised enough? It would be something like that.
Yeah. And I feel very 9ish at times, and I think this is probably why this what we have. Like, if you're gonna continue to disrupt the harmony or the functioning machine of everybody kind of playing their role and doing their part, if you're gonna disrupt that or mess that up, then that doesn't compute for me.
Yep.
Like, why wouldn't you adjust your ideals or adjust your opinion or the ways you're going to want to do things to fit the system, to keep this a well-oiled machine.
Right.
I'm not sure if I'm talking as a 3 here or I'm talking as part of the pragmatist group, but that's kind of
No,
how I feel.
especially if, like in the 3-6 relationship, if the 6 is being an anchor to the 3's ambition, that's not practically what you want. Or if the 6 is embarrassing to the 3, that also would, I imagine, upset the apple cart.
Yeah.
There's so Jeff's wife and I are also very close friends. She's a 3, I'm a 9, and we get along really, really well. We're the ones who, like, Jeff is sort of like my work husband, and so
Yeah.
Kelly and I, we get along on the other side of that pretty well. But also, there's a lot of things that I don't intuitively get. Like, she is great at marketing because 3s are great at marketing, and I have no interest in marketing because it just takes way too much energy, and I don't care what other people think about me. I just but so there's a ton of overlap. There's I go to her for advice, for help. Like, is this a good way to say this to the public? Like, is this something that you think would work? Like, there's a lot of good value that she brings as a sort of advisor for me running a business.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, if I were to follow her advice 100% whenever, like it, and to go a step further, if she were to come into that space that I've invited her and sort of like try to take over a little bit, like let's make this more efficient, let's make it like, let's do the things to make this appear better, then she would actually be stealing some of my peace, some of the harmonious environment that I'm trying to create. Like, could be a real disconnect there if we tried too hard to be in each other's spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a ton of ways that our spaces overlap that is really, really valuable for us. And that means that we can work together and also have this great relationship besides our work.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Good. Jeff, anything more to say there, or should we move on?
I unfortunately could talk for days about this combination and probably shouldn't.
It's good. Okay, so relationist and relationist.
Yeah, again, intuitive sense that the way I connect with you and the way that we should connect with one another is there's a gift giving. And I imagine that it's just understood. This is how relationships work. And so you see a lot of 2-5-8 pairings, 2s and 8s, 5s and 8s, 2s and 5s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's because intuitively you say, oh, here is this person giving me love and affection, and they would like that in return. And that's how relationships work, or they're giving me their wisdom, and they want me to receive it because that's how relationships work. So, just a lot. These are common for those reasons. It's also common. 3-6-9 is this as well. We didn't mention it, but these types are also on the line. And so there is a stress security move that's worth talking about with some of these pairings. And that can be really important in romantic relationships, because if your lover shores up your stress number, if you, that they can be a very stabilizing influence. And if your lover is your security number, that is somebody who's encouraging you into spaces where you're feeling secure. And so I see that with these types.
Yeah. I also think that there's often a lot of balance because one type is offering something the other type needs and vice versa. And so you have 8s and 5s. 8s are offering sort of a strength and a drive and an energy that the 5s don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And the 5s are offering a perspective that the 8s don't have or consider. And so when they can meet, there's a really good balance of that. It's similarly, like twos and eights are offering, like twos are offering a sort of care and concern about other people that eights don't carry with them naturally, and eights are offering an ability to stand up for yourself that twos don't carry naturally. And fives and twos, there's a thinking space that fives inhabit. The twos are like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yep.
And there can be a really good sort of like expansion of the ability to think and process when fives and twos come together for the two. And then on the opposite side, the consideration of themselves and their place in the world and how their feelings affect them and affect other people, and how because oftentimes fives don't really feel their feelings. They think about them. They have thoughts about the feeling space.
Right.
And twos can bring that energy to them. And so there's a lot of really nice complementary nature to these pairings.
2-5 can be real similar to 2-9 in that the 5 and 9s can neglect their physical selves.
Yep.
That 2 just often, again, connecting, I'm going to offer you love to shore up your physical self.
Yeah.
And that can often be received. I love that the 5 is shoring up the 2's thinking. And so there's complementariness there.
Yeah.
Help me out, just by way of reminder. So, because when I think of the relationists, it almost seems kind of pragmatic, like the pragmatists, because the twos are like, here, let me give you something, and I'm going to see if you receive it. For fives, let me give you my wisdom. So we'll see if you receive it. The eights, my strength. But they're different than the pragmatist group. And so how are they different? Is it, can you kind of nuance that a little bit for me again?
It's twofold. It's the outward focus is primary for 2s, 5s, and 8s.
Okay.
Their energy is going outward. The 2 is not thinking about their inner life and their feelings. They're thinking about your feelings.
Okay.
That's not how 3s work. 3s are thinking about their feelings and your feelings, as it were. The 8's energy going outward, the 5's energy going outward. It's especially, the 5 is very aware of what's out there that might get them. What they, their underlying feeling of fear is because they're so outwardly focused and observant. The 8 likewise does not want to be controlled by the stuff out there. And so, all that energy going outward. So that expectation of rejection, that expectation that you're going to get hurt, and that can be emotionally for the 2, the expectation that people, are going to reject you and you're not going to be wanted. That's just that overwhelming, that's what they come to the table with. And into that void, they're giving the gifts to see if they can connect.
The pragmatists are, the thing that we're offering is a functional space, and the relationists, it's the thing that they're offering is not transactional. It's relational.
Yeah, there you go.
And in that way, it's like if 3, 6s, and 9s are circles creating a potential Venn diagram, 2s, 5s, and 8s, I think, are more like arrows passing back and forth.
Gotcha.
The energy is coming back and forth between these types, going from one to the other, because they are giving something out.
So that's really helpful to think of. For us, TJ, here's our spaces, and then the 2s, 5s, and 8s are going outward, which I think of the 5s, and that feels counterintuitive to say that about the 5s because they're part of the withdrawn stance. So TJ, if you're providing a space in your coffee shop as a business owner for a 5 to come in and experience the peaceful harmony that you have, the vibe going on, you're like, this is great. Like, he's in my space. This is great. Like, what is that 5 going to be wanting? Is it to share something that he's been learning or she's been learning, and then to have a meaningful interaction with you there? Or what, can you kind of go with that illustration for a minute?
Yeah, my experience with fives, particularly thinking about it from the perspective of the coffee shop, the space that I have created, is that fives are either there for their own thing because they're doing their own thing, or if they're looking for some type of connection within that space, then they want to offer something that will that other people can connect to. So one of my essentially day manager he is a five, and the conversations that he likes to have, the way that he connects with other people, is when he can nerd out about something that he knows a lot about. So I make jokes about talking about the Beatles or talking about other music. He knows a ton about music. He's the type of person who always has like 17 different tabs open because he'll follow the Wikipedia rabbit hole and just like keep going and going and going until he learns he has everything there is to know about a subject. And if people are not able to engage with him on those things that he is talking about, then he doesn't really feel a connection.
Yeah. Okay. That's really helpful. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
One of the things you're talking there is that for 369s, they're coming to relationships with an understanding that relationships are transactional. That's probably not ever stated, but there's 1-3 I have in mind in particular who's a famous person who's consistently critiqued because all of his relationships are transactional, and it's just obvious that he's using people up and setting them aside. And don't you realize what you're getting into when you're in a relationship with me? This isn't about us. It's I get what I want, you get what you want, sort of thing. Same story with relationists. It's they're coming into the relationship knowing that people reject them all the time. And so that actually creates a dynamic, especially, again, I want to talk about romance there, but and I assume it could go across the board. But if you go, if the person across the table with you also is timid about being rejected, or is worried about being rejected, you're both coming to the relationship with that language already there, and it never needed to be spoken. You know what I mean? And anyway, that's how I'm looking at it as I'm looking at this list.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and that makes sense as I think about 5s and 8s, and maybe why they're a little bit hesitant to share personal information right away or get intimate right away, is because they're coming in with that rejection. And for 2s, it doesn't seem that obvious. It seems like they're not expecting to be rejected because they're happy, they're positive, they're interacting with you, but the minute they do feel rejection, they might be out. So that does help.
Yeah, this is a gross over exaggeration of this point. So to 2s, put that lens on. This is a gross mischaracterization of what you're doing. But it's almost like you never hear your servants back talk. You never hear your servants say that they something negative about you. Well, of course you don't, because their job is to serve you. In a similar way, 2s, we don't experience their inner life because they're there to serve you. And oftentimes the person on the other side of that, we don't recognize that for what it is. We blindly sort of like assume that they are just this loving and giving, and we don't have to give anything back to them. That can often be the case.
It's again because so much of the energy is coming at you that's affection, and the 2 is making it about you.
Right.
The 2 isn't focused on themselves.
Right.
Why, and they're focused on you. And so that is how the energy is going. We, in our movie typing podcast, by the way, if you should go check out our movie typing podcast. We did an episode on Syndrome, who's the villain from The Incredibles, and he's just there to help. He's just there to serve. He's just there to give everything he has to Mr. Incredible. And then he gets rejected. And then you can go into some 8 space all of a sudden, get shored up, get a little angry, fight for yourself, shore things back up, and then and move back into the world. And he ends up again serving people. He ends up serving countries by selling them weapons that he's developed, and he expects to have his affection repaid through power and through cash. But that, expects to be rejected there after that first encounter. Anyway, again,
I love that podcast, by the way. I love going to movies and stories to kind of illustrate what we're talking about here. So appreciate the work that you guys have done with that. Okay.
The last one
on to Pragmatist and Pragmatist.
It would be the we're on Idealists.
Did I get those mixed around?
We started with Pragmatists.
Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, you jumped ahead, I think, Jeff.
Oh, on the list.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for correcting me.
I just want to talk about you guys. That's how that works.
We can talk more about Jeff and Idealists with Idealists.
So 1s and 4s are interesting in that. So here's the thing. They're pulling others in order to get connected. And that can work for a time. If you're pulling in the same direction, that can work. But oftentimes, these can be much more difficult sorts of relationships, and they can fall apart because you'll start pulling in different directions. And so you may have been pulling in the same direction initially, but when the pulling starts going different directions, then it's, the relationship will break down. And so that's a kind of a warning. So I have seen, again, on the romantic side, seen some 1-4 couples, seen a lot of 1-7 couples. 7-4 we can talk about in a different kind of way, but that 1-4 and 1-7, they share, a security stress line, and that can complement, how the energy going on there romantically. But you really need to name the fact that you have different motives, and when you're pulling another person into a relationship, there really has to be a surrendering of some of your own motive in order to maintain that connection.
Mm-hmm. Especially because for 1s, 4s, and 7s, not only do they have different motives, but they idealize their own motive anyway. Of course, this is the best one. Why wouldn't you want to meet me here?
Yep.
So good. The first thing that comes to mind is the Mr. Rogers movie. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the guy who's struggling in that movie is a 4, and I feel like Mr. Rogers is a 1. You might disagree. Maybe he's a 2. I'm not sure. But it seems like if they are a 1 and 4, maybe they're not. That relationship combination.
Let's assume so. And jump in. Yeah,
the 4 is has all kinds of personal problems going on, and he's sort of drawing Mr. Rogers into his world.
Yeah.
And Mr. Rogers is he's a 1, wants to help fix his problems and sees it as an opportunity to elevate this guy. And so I see kind of both things working hand in hand, where Mr. Rogers is working for a better world, and he's a good mentor, and he's helping. And then you got the other guy who's kind of pulling Mr. Rogers into his own internal world. And that's a blessing for him to be able to receive that help and that rescue. That's just one of the combinations that comes to mind.
I feel like this is kind of illustrating the point. That relationship's probably going to be pretty temporary. The 1 is going to make the 4, is going to understand what's going on in the 4's world. It's going to engage them hardcore because they want to make the 4's life better. but it better become better. If it doesn't become better, the one's not doing anything worthwhile in the world. They're going to move on. If the 4, quote unquote, improves or whatever, the 4 is probably going to start pursuing, something else. And, there's no work for the 1 to do anymore. Yeah, as it were. And so there was very much an idealistic energy that started things out. The 4 really wants to get into the depths of their emotion. The 1 wants to see their emotions get, systematized, healthy, moving you forward. And then once that job is done, we don't have anything.
Yeah. So that's an unhealthy example of course, but that's kind of, you put language to what I was thinking in terms of, once they're if it's only temporary, because if they don't keep coming each other's way, it's the relationship's going to dissolve. If Mr. Rogers doesn't see him improve and start working for the good of the world and just continues to mope and want somebody to play the therapist role in his life or the helper role, then it's not gonna work out.
Yeah.
I think on the other side of that relationship, we also have to acknowledge that, like, sometimes in the 1-4 space, 4s are just looking to be true and they don't want to be fixed.
Right. Yep.
And if the 1 comes with too much, here's all the things you need to do to fix yourself kind of energy, then the 4 can say, whoa, 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 whoa. I am beautiful and wonderful as I am, flaws and all. I don't need to be fixed here. And there's again, disconnect because of their idealism.
That's a good point. Here's where the relationship can actually have traction, is when the 1 isn't interested in fixing the 4. If the 1 is doing something wonderful, I'm going to create something. And you know what I need? I need somebody with depth and insight and can create some beautiful stuff. And the 4 says, hey, that's me. I do that. And the energy kind of for creating the project is coming from the 1, and the 4 is coming in. They're getting to bring the colors to the enterprise. That has stability. If they're in balance, the ideals are both met over time.
Yeah, to keep to go take that illustration a little further. I did some research and found some articles and found some history on Mr. Rogers, and he did seem to access like that 4 energy within his work, the way that he was working with puppets and kids and deep diving into helping kids understand their emotions. That's really that's beautiful for the 4 to see that kind of work play out in Mr. Rogers' shows. Go ahead.
We haven't done the work yet, but TJ and I have a theory that the heroic side of our number is the high side of our stress number. Yeah. And that would be a case in point, is that Fred Rogers getting in touch with the high side of 4 is going to unleash a very healthy human being. And I think you're right in saying that that's what you see there.
So, Fred was obviously working for a better, beautiful, good world in the work that he was doing. That's very obvious.
Right.
But for a 4, a beautiful world is when everybody is authentic, when they're in touch with their feelings, when they're emoting their authentic feelings. And that was the thing that Fred struggled with. It said in an article, it said his wife and his best friends like never saw him get angry once. Right. He stuffed that anger down so deep. And that's why it's so beautiful at the very end of the movie when he like hits the piano the wrong way. And that was his way of like expressing anger, or, through different means, through his work. And so the 4 can help in terms of help Fred with that of getting in touch with that anger and expressing that, rather than we all don't want Fred to have to stuff that anger his whole life. Like we want him to be able to express frustration and not bottle that up. And so the 4 can be really helpful in showing that kind of world to the 1.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that with all three of these types, a pair is only ever going to work if both types recognize and are able to sort of temper their idealism, because eventually they will start pulling in opposite directions.
Right.
That's a great point, TJ. Yeah. Temper your idealism.
Mm-hmm.
What often, so I see this with 7 and 1 combinations. Got real close friends who are 7-1 marriage, and they separate at times.
Mm-hmm.
He will go on a 2-week hiatus, hunting in some cabin somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and while he's gone, she's gonna clean that house, and that's not gender roles. That's one obsession, is what I'm trying to highlight there. She could be the one hunting and he could be the one cleaning the house. Also, it would still work. That where your ideals. So as an idealist, I know this. Where you unleash your idealism needs to be, there needs to be wisdom there, and because there's so much energy that can get generated by 1s, 4s, and 7s towards their ideals. And so for myself, I find pockets and just say, this can get obsessed over, but this over here cannot, and you just got to shut that down and engage other numbers. I can engage 4 space with my children and not feel like they need to be constantly improving all the time, as it were. And I can elevate the 4 space, or I can elevate 7 space, I suppose, or 2 space, or, 9 space for that matter. In terms of, like, I have all sorts of resources in terms of my Enneagram number to pull from to temper the ideals.
Again, I appreciate this conversation, because I think oftentimes I see the differences in 1s, 4s, and 7s, but to see how when they do have the same vision and same ideals, it can be really beautiful, beautiful pairing.
Yeah, I got one last thought for these.
Sure.
Just in terms of the contrast, 1s, 4s, and 7s have strong anchors in time. They're really worth naming.
Yes.
7s are going to be very idealistic about the future, and 4s are going to be very idealistic about the past, and 1s are going to be altogether idealistic about what we're doing right now. That has to be named in your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to unpack that, TJ?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's seems pretty straightforward, but when you actually get into it, like, it is a lot of this, like, pulling in a different direction kind of mindset. And so if a 4 is not creating space for a 7 to make plans because they really want to talk about their emotions, they're going to watch the 7 run away from their internal perch. And similarly, if a 7 is not ever willing to sort of, like, back up and look inside, then they're going to completely lose the 4.
Yep.
The orientation to time here is not, we don't need to think about it in terms of, like, past, present, future. What we really think about when my train derailed. When we think about past, present, and future, we really need to remember that, like, these 3 things have, like, we carry all of them together. And so if our idealism is completely ignoring any one part of this trio, let alone the other 2 parts, then we're headed for disaster. And the other types bring in some kind of flavor that really helps us understand that part. So 7s being idealistic about the future, that's fine, so long as you remember that there's stuff that you have to do right now to get to the future that you want. There's things that you need to remember about what happened last time, or someone else who tried this, or whatever else, in order to prepare you for the future that you're trying to get to. And like, that works with all 3 types. There is, it is really easy for particularly unhealthy idealists to only focus on their particular orientation.
That's exactly
And
it.
if you forget the others, you're headed for disaster.
Yeah. I watched the dynamic between my brother who's a 4 and my father who's a 1. And my father's constant kind of refrain is he's just stuck in the past. You know, get over it, man, is kind of the thing that's going on there. And for my brother, it's you don't understand how depthy and meaningful this season was and why it really has weight and value. And that's just a tug of war. It's same story with I know of a 7-4 pairing that's a parent child pairing where the 7 is the parent, 4 is the child. Real similar, where the 7 can come across as very flaky and just has no depth or to their existence because they're always on to the next thing, where the 7 is like, man, why are we still stuck in the mud? Why do you want to live there? And that's going to have that dynamic going on.
Great insights. The thing I keep coming back to is because TJ, you just mentioned orientation to time, and so that then brings us into the stances, which we talked about last time, and how everything can, like I said at the beginning, it's like a 3D model, and the Enneagram is so helpful because it's a map, it's a growth map, it's a way of categorizing us in all kinds of ways, and it just never ends. There's lots of connections to be made. And when you know all of them, all the different connections, the stances, the centers of intelligence, it starts to build upon each other and nuance everything. Right. And so I wish, someone would write a book series on all of these relationships.
Make it so.
I say that because I know you guys want to write a book series on all of these conversations so that we can see everything. I mean, I'll have a transcript for this, which would be great. But when your book comes out in the future, it'll be so helpful for me to sit there and look at the written words on the page and just muse on it for hours and days, because it all goes hand in hand with each other, like you just said, to help the idealists. The stances is helpful to come into play, and vice versa. So my brain is just like, firing on all kinds of cylinders, and it's partly good that I feel like I should be more competent in this, to be more helpful, I guess, to be a winner in this as a facilitator here. But I'm glad that I'm still learning, because I know a lot of people haven't done a lot of research or don't know a lot about these groups, but the goal is not to learn everything in one conversation. The goal is to get to the tip of the iceberg, start understanding how the interplay between these, and to go on that journey of continuing to learn about these. So I just love that this can be a starting point for a lot of people to do more research and get more into it. So, man, anything you guys want to say in closing to sort of wrap up the conversation?
Yeah, I suppose the stuff that's out there already on this is a lot of Dr. David Daniels' work centers on the harmony triads. He calls them harmony triads, these affect groups. Chris Huritz's first book has quite a bit on this, the Sacred Enneagram, and those are the two places I've seen a lot, most of the stuff on these pairings. If you want to get into literature now, as well as our stuff. I mean, we did like 7 episodes on how we connect in 2022, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
TJ, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just I want to remind everyone, don't type other people. If you're looking to have these kinds of conversations with someone across the table from you, a sister or a parent or a romantic partner or a boss, like it doesn't matter who it is. If they are not interested in pursuing the Enneagram, then you're not allowed to type them. You can make a guess, but it's anyway. The other thing is just to re-emphasize what we've been saying this whole time. It's always about being able to observe this behavior, being able to observe the way that you do things, the way that you individually see the world. And that's different from the way the person across the table from you sees the world. The way that you connect with someone else with these affect groups, it's probably going to be different. And there's going to be dynamics that play out because of the difference there. And learning to see that, learning to see the patterns, and being able to communicate, this is what I need from you and this is what I have to offer. That can do a lot to help resolve some of the complications that come from messy humans being in relationship with each other.
Great thoughts, TJ. Yeah, just really appreciate all that you guys have said. We've talked about a lot, but like one thing that I'm walking away from this conversation is how have my relationships, and particularly my relationship with my wife, how has it become transactional, and what can I do to start working on that area of my life?
This is a worthwhile thing to say on this. I think it's an awful move for sometimes for us to think our type is somehow negative or we need to escape our type. There's something, the real question on these fronts ends up being, is the pragmatic way you come to relationships, is it healthy or unhealthy? Because there's a very healthy way to be a pragmatist in the world. I love the hell out of threes, creating spaces for me to feel like I have value. That is such a gift. And if I lost that, I would lose an essential part of myself in that. And so there's something, the question is health, unhealth, as opposed to right and wrong, good and bad on when it comes to how you connect with others.
Great point. Yeah. Researching Enneagram history, I've done a lot of research, and early on the language was more, you got to get out of your type, you got to escape that.
Right.
But it wasn't until the 80s, 90s, when people started doing more, like Helen Palmer and Reese Hudson started to talk more about the strengths of each type and those patterns, that the positive started to come into play. So yeah, I'm sure people have kind of been pulled in one or two directions before, hearing different people of like, it's bad, you got to get out of that. Or it's maybe all good. You look on Instagram and you just get all the fluffy good stuff about your type. There's a in between healthy middle there.
Yep.
But I think this is the longest episode I've ever recorded.
This is short for us, unfortunately.
And so if you stuck around, I just want to let you know that we'll be giving you a free car. No, I'm just joking. No, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I just appreciate hanging out with you guys. I learned so much from you guys. And again, if you want to continue to learn from Jeff and TJ, go to aroundthecircle.org. You can follow them on Apple, Spotify, their podcasts there. The Start Here podcast, if you're wanting to explore what your type is. It's kind of a self-typing podcast. I'll have the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter links below. Yeah, any closing thoughts before we jump on to part 3?
No.
Nope.
It's teed up though. We're ready to go. We're warmed up.
Well, thank
2.5 hours next time.
Thank you guys again for tuning in. I hope you are you feel like you learned so much. Your brain's about ready to explode like me. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and just understanding parts of the Enneagram I didn't even know existed. It's really a wonderful journey. And so if you like this conversation, then yeah, the good news is part 3 is coming up next. So don't go anywhere.